Sige po, pwede po mag-start na.
Kasi mahina ang internet ko, nawawala ako eh.
Okay lang po sir, kumbaga manageable naman. Siguro pwede mo na mag-start ng presenter po.
Okay, so can we start now, Mr. Sino nga ba ang susunod? Montes, Mr. Montes with your presentation.
My name is Montes from BSRK 41, and for today I'm going to present you my RMA thesis entitled Negros Occidental New Provincial Capital Complex, Creating a Seamless Bureaucratic Environment Through Phenomenal Transparency in a Government Office Building. For my Chapter 1, Project Background, for the introduction, the provincial government of Negros Occidental is currently located in Bacolod City, a highly urbanized city that is independently governed by the city government of Bacolod, making it outside the jurisdiction of the provincial government of Negros Occidental. The current administration is planning to relocate the provincial capital in Talisay City in a 25-hectare property that they bought. I noticed that through the presence of hierarchical organization that distinguished bureaucracy exhibits a lot of disadvantages that affects the condition of the workers, making the workplace environment unproductive. Through the application of the phenomenal transparency to produce a defined and organized management of the spaces, consequently will create a conducive environment. For the problems I identified includes the user productivity and efficiency, visual connectivity, hierarchical organization. For my main goal for this research is to produce a design for the new provincial capital that will reform the bureaucracy in government offices in a seamless manner through the use of transparency as the architectural solution that will increase the productivity and efficiency of government workers. My objectives are to compose an office plan that will increase the productivity and efficiency of the workers by applying continuous spatial layering and organization, to decrease visual boundaries by achieving an inviting and openness in the environment of the provincial capital complex, to apply the concept of transparency in a government building that will produce a seamless bureaucratic environment in the overall character of the building. For my scope and delimitation, the physical scope of my project will involve the development of the planning of the new Capitol building, provide parking spaces, open grounds, commercial spaces, and other civic spaces that are needed. And for my delimitations, the data that I will gather will only focus on necessary data inside Negros Occidental, which includes geographical maps and other statistical data that I can use for my user analysis and site analysis. For my justification, the relocation of the capital will justify the needs for greater expansion space, and it will also be convenient for the residents under the provincial administration because they will not have to go through the congested metropolis of Bacolod. Relocating the capital will also provide development opportunities outside of Bacolod City, as it will be a new growth center that will bring economic growth in the province. For my Chapter 2, Research Organization, I would like to discuss my theoretical framework first. Through my initial reading about the building typology, I identified that bureaucracy in government offices affects the process of fast and efficient public service. Some gaps identified are that in this working environment leads to rigid workspace, in which workers become unproductive due to the lack of flexible working spaces. The proponent also identified that hierarchical organization in government institutions lead to slow decision-making due to multiple communication barriers and a lack of collaborative working environment. In these gaps, I researched for possible architectural solutions that lead me to the use of phenomenal transparency. This was theorized by Colin Rowe and Robert Slutsky in 1982. Phenomenal transparency is a visual device to present the different spatial locations in which space fluctuates in a continuous activity, and in this manner, the users will be engaged to perceive the space within the project rather than the visual qualities of materials used on the facade. It described that layered structures of the facade elements, voids, and even the form of and their existence in a certain harmony without interfering with each other. This approach was applied to incorporate a sense of transparency in public building, and in which it can also improve the working environment of the users. And for my conceptual framework, the research is oriented to producing a provincial capital building that values the experience of the workers and how the residents of the province distinguish the accountability in the government through the application of the phenomenal transparency in the design to achieve an optimum conducive environment for the primary user. I will also apply different lighting, acoustic, and ventilation techniques that shows the characteristics of the phenomenal transparency in the overall design. For my research design, the structure of the design process will adapt a combination of qualitative and quantitative process. The proponent will conduct survey related on workplace satisfaction and the attribute of design preference of government workers. The review of related literature, case studies, news articles, publications, and other viable source of information that is applicable and related about the research topic will be analyzed and applied in the formulation of the design. I applied the H-little summary of design process for my research design. First is the problem identification, then the data gathering stage, the analysis, formulation of design framework, conceptual development, and the final development. For my review of related literature, my topics are divided into three categories: building typology, bureaucracy in offices, and phenomenal transparency. For the first literature review, I focus on the functions of the provincial government to gain insight on what are the services provided of the building typology of my project, and to identify the primary users for my project. And then I also did a literature review about evolution of office designs to distinguish how the design of workplace trends change and what factors lead to these changes. I also conducted a literature review about office design, how office designs affect productivity, in which I identified what factors are effective in increasing the productivity in workplace design. I also conducted a literature review about designing for public structures, and in this literature review, I identified designing and planning considerations for public use structures. And for the second topic, bureaucracy in government offices, I have two literature review. The first one is characteristic of a bureaucracy, in which I distinguish what are characteristics of bureaucracy and its effects on the workplace. And my next one is the good and the bad of bureaucracy, to identify what the pros and cons bureaucracy brings in the workplace and distinguish how can architecture respond to the disadvantages identified. For my concept, phenomenal transparency, my first literature review about this topic is the phenomenal transparency theory by Colin Rowe and Robert Slutsky in 1980 to understand how the application of phenomenal transparency incite curiosity of users by applying spatial layers. And second one is Transparent Building and the Illusion of Democracy by Romulo Barato in 2021 to acknowledge how the impression of democracy characterizing government buildings by applying transparency. For the last one is the transparency as a component of public spaces to understand how to establish a building's quality to enrich the public space. And also in this literature, I recognize the different types of definition of transparency, which are phenomenal, literal, and experiential. For my case studies, the case studies I selected are divided into two categories. The first one is the architectural analysis of the plan and the design, and for the second one is oriented towards the architectural concept. For my first case study, I analyzed the plan of the existing provincial capital in Negros to determine the spaces required and to gain insight on behavioral analysis of the target users, and to identify the planning details of the existing capital complex and use this as reference for the relocation project. And my second one is the Buenos Aires New City Hall in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and in which I identified if activity spaces are open, natural lit, and visible, they exhibit a sense of community. And for my third, Bataan Provincial Capital in Balanga City, Bataan, I analyzed how the design of the modern capital in the country represent transparency in government and how the design manipulated spatial organizations. For my second type of case studies are the following: the Chapel of San Pedro, Kalungsod in Cebu, Capik Ready Culture Center in Istanbul, Turkey, and Reichstag Building in Germany. in which I identified the application of the concept I wanted to use, which is phenomenal transparency. For my chapter 4, site inventory, the contents are the site criteria, which are the major and minor criteria. For my major criteria, it includes the land area, zoning, accessibility, impact on governmental services, utilitarian location, construction cost, visibility, and prominence. And for my minor criteria involves vegetation and topography. The site criteria was established based on the site criteria of Paducah City Hall, which I selected since my project is similar, which is both government facility. Based on the site criteria, the relocation site of the new Capitol complex along Bacolod Silay Airport Access Road in Barangay Efegenio, Rizal Talisay City, the provincial government will utilize the 25-hectare lot. Since then, the site has great potential for future expansion and is not crowded unlike the location of the existing capital. The zoning of the new site is intended for government use when the provincial government bought the land that was previously intended for the housing project for capital employees at the Office of the Provincial Government. Provincial Engineering. Good vehicular accessibility since it is along the Bacolod Silay Airport access road. The impact on governmental services on the selected site will be much preferable since the current location of the provincial capital is outside of its jurisdiction. The site also has adequate access to public utilities from Talisay City Water District and Negros Electric Cooperative, and no major utility location would be required. The site will be visible and prominent since the current surrounding of the sites are fields of sugarcane plantation, which makes the building the focal point within the area. Thank you for watching my presentation on my research titled Negros Occidental, New Provincial Capital Complex, Creating a Seamless Bureaucratic Environment Through Phenomenal Transparency in a Government Office Building. Greetings, my name is Joshua Montes from BSRK41, and for today I'm going to present you my RMA. Good morning po.
Good morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Montes. We have for your panel of jurors, Architect Ventura will be the chairman, and the jury 2 will be Architect Pawal, and jury 3 is Architect Maghir, with comments and evaluation of the jury.
Okay. Thank you, Architect Ray Gabitan. So, siguro po, ladies first, Architect Pawal, you can start with the question. Baka may tanong po kayo, Architect Pawal.
Unahin ko na si Architect June. May hinahanap lang ako sa sa laptop.
Sige po, Architect June Maghirang.
Yes, Sir Ray. Paki-plus nga iho yung title muli. Yung title page.
Ayun. So muna lang yan. Negros Occidental.
Sige, sir. Okay, Negros Occidental, New Provincial Capital. This project ba ito'y magiging bago in general in terms of the location, lilipat ng lugar, at the same time bagong building, tama ba?
Yes po, relocation po ng building.
Kaya nagsabihin, bagong building to, at the same time bagong lugar or location. Yes or no?
Ano po yun?
Bago?
Hindi ko po. Medyo mahina
Ano
po.
tong project mo na to? Itong project mo, bagong building, at the same time bagong location.
Yes po, kasi po yung current na Capitol. Lilipat po yung Capitol building sa ibang city po. Since yung Bacolod City po, independently governed na po siya. Since highly urbanized na rin po kasi yun. lilipat po siya sa nearby city na Talisay City. Na kung saan may property binili po yun, provincial government ng Negros.
So, anong estado nung dating Kapitolyo? What is the status?
Nag-focus po ako dun sa yung planning po nun, yung content ng spaces, tapos yung in-identify ko po kung sino yung mga prospective users ko po.
Hindi, in terms of the situation in general, yung Kapitolyo, anong studies mo doon?
Nung in-study ko po yung existing capital, sinabi po doon na 88 years old na po kasi yun nung tinayo siya noong 1933. Tapos in-establish siyang National Heritage Site noong 2001. Tapos plano po nilang ilipat yung provincial capital sa iba. Since gusto nilang magdagdag pa ng mga additional offices at saka parking spaces na hindi na nila masyadong magawa doon sa existing na provincial capital.
Okay. Can you mention some problems? Anong mga naging problema sa existing capital? No?
More on po, expansion spaces po. Wala po masyado.
What else? Aside from that. Narinig kita. Aside from that, ano pa?
Sige po. Tsaka yung sa jurisdiction po kasi ng Negros, Occidental Province, mahirapan daw po sila mag-function pag situated sila dun sa city ng Bacolod. Since, hindi na po nila jurisdiction yung city na yun.
Okay. Wait lang
Sige po.
So about may bagong system ka bang ipapasok dyan in terms of the operation of the building, in terms how to use the facilities by your target users, no? May bago ka bang ipapasok?
Parang more on po siya. Bali po yun, magiging ko po, yung planning ko po sa office ko, more on open type, in which usually kasi po 'di ba yung mga government facilities or offices, rigid po sila, segregated dahil sa hierarchy. Tapos mabagal po sila mag-function due to lack of collaboration. O more on office planning. Tapos yung isa pa pong innovation na balak i-introduce is yun parang magiging output po ng design ng building, makikita po ng public.
About yung sa part ng do you have any standard guidelines, no? That will promote the standard facility of a government building like this. May guidelines ka ba? Standard guidelines in design the
May nakita
standard.
po kung
Just go ahead.
more on lang po kasi yung nakita kong guidelines sa Department Circular number 52 ng nilabas ng DOJ. Parang po yun, content po nun, guidelines on the rehabilitation or construction of government buildings / office spaces and the acquisition or outright purchase of land and buildings.
About yung guidelines about the complete or additional, hindi ko alam kung may nadagdag ba regarding the organizational chart, may mga staff bang madadagdag sa bagong what you call it, system, no? Operational system. Kasi dapat updated, magiging updated ka, di ba? Yes or no? Dapat
Okay,
updated ka dyan in terms of baka may may mga dadagdag or may bagong departamento or mga minor na
okay po. Hindi ko pa po na-specify kung ano specifically.
Oo. Meaning to say, what I would like to emphasize to you, yung the updates, no? Yung latest, no? Kasi mamaya from the existing nag-stick ka lang doon pero hindi ka aware about the new new system or additional
Okay po.
stuff for the market kung meron man. Kasi nga, manggagaling yun sa guidelines mo from the latest or update. Okay? So, ayun lang sa akin, iyo.
Okay po. Thank you po.
Thank you po, Architect
Ray
Bagira.
po.
Architect Powell, do you have questions?
Siguro ako, it's more on input and clarification on his data. Kasi based on your book na I was reviewing last night, so this is originally in Bacolod. And Bacolod is the capital of the Negros Occidental. So that's why the capital is situated doon sa sa Bacolod. And then your proposal is to transfer it to Talisay, which basically ang Bacolod kasi is first class city. And then you're going to relocate that capital to fourth class city in Talisay. So anong implication niyan doon sa
Yes po.
sa dating Bacolod capital or Capitol, kasi yung Capitol, if you're going to study also the architectural character, so it was designed, inspired in neoclassic, so American era siya. Okay, so if you're going to take a look at the historical background of the architecture, meron siyang architectural significance. So if you're going to remove that, paano maapektuhan una, of course, yung cultural relevance niya, yung historical relevance niya. Pero I just want you to take a look at the yung pag-transfer niya from first class city to fourth, and this is a capital building of the Negros Occidental. What do you mean by okay?
Ano po, yung dating yung existing na provincial capital, pag ililipat po yun, pag magtatayo na po sila ng bago, gagawin daw po nilang museum, plano pong gawin museum yung existing.
Pero kasi kaya siya nakalagay sa Bacolod kasi you have quoted a person there na he only served as a consultant, okay, ng Kapitolyo. So parang yung kanya namang influence and power hindi ganoon kalaki para sundin mo to relocate the capital. Kasi kaya nga siya nakalagay sa Bacolod kasi it's the capital of the Negros Occidental. Tapos ililipat mo sa isang hindi maunlad kasi nasa fourth class city yung paglilipatan mo. So of course may effect 'yan on the marami siyang epekto. So sana i-consider mo siya. And also halos katabi niyan kasi if you're going to check the vicinity, halos nandun siya sa sentro talaga, which is a good location for the capital. Okay? Which represent the province. Tapos halos malapit din sa kanya kasi yung munisipyo ng Bacolod City. So talagang medyo integrated siya. Tapos pag-aralan mo mabuti yung mismong lugar kasi once you evacuated that place, I don't think so na basta na lang sila i-convert into museum. Kasi actually, kung titingnan mo yung picture, ang laki niya para sabihin mo na kulang yung space. So, might be you can just do something about it na instead of relocating it, you can do redevelopment. Pero, of course, you have to consider din yung preservation ng building. Kasi you have to consider that's Bacolod.
Bali po ma'am, hindi naman ililipat yung capital na city ng Negros. Bali sa pa rin po siya, sa Bacolod pa din.
Hindi, yes.
Bali yung building lang po mismo.
I know hindi siya, yung capital, Bacolod pa din. Pero kaya nga siya nakalocate dyan kasi yan yung Kapitolyo. So ngayon, bakit mo ililipat siya sa fourth class city? Nasa first class city na siya. So ngayon ang tanong, sinong mataas na na official ang nag-propose niyan?
Yung governor po nung ngayon, si Governor Lilares.
Actually, wala kang
Tapos ano
nakalagay,
po,
wala kang nakalagay doon sa book mo. Meron ka lang kinote na isang personality, pero that personality kasi magra-run siya. Magra-run siya tung next year election. Kaya lumalabas yung pangalan niya ngayon. Siguro, Mr. Montes, i-verify mo yan kasi masyadong questionable to. Nasa first class city na nga yung Kapitolyo, which is Kapitolyo yon. It's an office para doon sa lahat ng mga cities doon sa probinsya. Tapos ililipat mo siya doon sa isang lugar na sa Talisay City na ang layo ng kanyang ang layo ng kanyang level.
okay po. Noted po.
Pag-aralan mo ding mabuti. Tapos siguro yung yung suggestion ko din, in your method, i-specify mo doon bakit 2 years na mga empleyado yung respondents mo sa survey, ano ang kanyang significance. Kasi I think you could not just count the 2 years, but you have to count also yung tawag dito, yung status nila, yung employment status nila doon. Tapos maglagay ka pa ng mas strong na na tawag dito, yung sino magka-qualify as your respondents para masagot yung mga tanong mo. And also doon sa interview mo, siguro you have to identify din sino yung mga i-interviewin mo. Depende yon kung ano yung gusto mo makuhang sagot. Lalahatin ko na, Sir Ben, ha. Tapos suggestion ko din doon sa siguro sa case study mo kasi parang ang gusto mong dito maging transparent. Okay, maging transparent yung service ng government. Siguro i-strengthen mo pa yung justification mo. Paano mo siya na-conclude na merong problema with that. And also doon sa site criteria mo, kasi nakita ko doon sa site criteria, meron kang minor, tapos meron kang major. Pero basically, doon kasi sa nilagay, sandali, hinahanap ko yung criteria. Okay. Okay, etong yung nakalagay ditong impact on governmental services, kailangan ba yung kasama sa criteria in looking for a site? At saka yung, of course, yung
Yes po,
construction cost, paki-validate na lang tong mga criteria mo.
Okay.
Yung major at saka minor. Based on your project, ha? Ibig sabihin, ano ba ang hinihingi ng project mo? Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Architect Powell. Mr. Montes, can you flash the title ulit? Yung title lang, no? Ayan, no? Can you explain your subtitle, no? Creating, ibig sabihin ng bureaucratic environment to phenomenal transparency in government.
Bali yung seamless bureaucratic environment. Parang yung bureaucracy pa rin yung functions ng office.
Okay.
Pero mas efficient siya since yung planning niya mag-iiba instead of the traditional way of designing government offices. Tapos yung phenomenal transparency po, doon po mag-reflect yun kung saan yung public, mapaperceive nila yung interior nung building para mas mag-function pa sila much efficiently and much transparently.
So, does it reflect to your planning of your Capitol building or Capitol complex?
Planning po?
Di ba architecture tayo? And then does it reflect kasi in making a title, it describes the topic, the method, the sample, and the result. So, ano ba yung, let's say, okay, your main topic is Negros Occidental Provincial Capital Complex. Okay? So, how do you address it for the sample and for the method? What will be the method of your study in order to come up with the solution?
Yung sa theoretical framework ko po,
Nasa,
nag-base po ako dun.
nasa theoretical framework, pero wala pa sa title.
Yeah.
Tama ba?
Ano po yun?
Nasa theoretical framework ba? Nabanggit mo, nag-choppy ka? O choppy lang yung connection ko.
Akin din po. Yung nag-base po ako, na-formulate ko po itong title na to since in-identify ko po yung yung system of management in a government public offices in which bureaucracy is the system. Tapos po, naghanap po ako ng mga disadvantages na in which architecture can intervene.
So, bureaucratic environment is the system of the new provincial capital. Yun ang ang nilalabas mo sa title.
Opo.
Okay. So, how about your research, yung method niya? How do you explain from the title yung sa method? How do you describe the method of your research, of your study, of your proposed project?
Yun po, yung method ko po doon sa pag-compose po nung solution ko, po ako sa inanalyze ko po yung pros and cons in a bureaucracy, tapos na-identify ko po yung negatives, tapos nag-formulate po ako nag-search po ako ng mga possible solution na in which ko po yun, improve yung condition na yun, in which na-encounter ko po yung phenomenal transparency.
Siguro, for me, I feel that the title itself, naandun na, but siguro need to improve a little bit. No? What kumbaga, ang hinahanap ko kasi, so you have your sample as the Negros Occidental Capitol Building. The result, yung design mo, phenomenal transparency, yung methods, creating a seamless bureaucratic environment. Okay, siguro kung okay naman title mo, kung if you make it simplify, much better. Yun lang masasabi ko.
Okay.
And then going to your book, kasi wala akong listahan, wala akong link sa book mo. Hindi ko nakikita. Kumbaga nag-ano lang ako kumbaga substitute lang ako kay Architect Ian o kay Architect Velasquez na dapat jury, wala kasi siya, no? So hindi ko mabasa o wala akong references, kaya doon lang muna ako sa title.
Sorry po.
And it's okay kasi nag-ano lang naman ako, substitute. Hearing from the two jury, I think they are right with the locations. Do you have other questions po, Architect Maghirang? Architect Maghirang, baka po may tanong kayo, Architect Pawal?
Okay na, Sir Ray.
Okay, thank you. Architect June Maghirang? Baka hindi mahirap kumunik kasi ako rin mahina connection ko parang nag-choppy kanina. Anyway, if no more questions, thank you for your presentation. Siguro po kailangan lang po namin ng konting room for the jury's deliberation. Sir Ray Gabitan, may I request the students na doon muna sa para pag-usapan yung.
Okay, tech team, please vacate muna the room.
Na rin yung tech team.
Nawala si Architect Maghirang.
Nako, baka na-choppy rin.
Sir, may isa pa po na iwan.
Actually, si Miss Pabula, andito pa sa
Hindi po ako makaalis kasi hindi pa siya Pwede ko po ba siya tanggalin sa room?
Oo, remove ata. Pwedeng ganun.
Ayun, nakaalis na.
Paki-unshare na lang. Paki-unshare na lang yung
Apa.
Nawala si
Si
ano,
architect
Maghirang.
maghirang patingin sa main room, baka nasa main room.
Nahirapan daw po mag-connect.
Okay.
Ah,
O, pareho sa inyo. Ako rin kanina kasi ano na dito, makulimlim na.
dito naman sira yung down yung ano namin, yung converge.
Ay, converge. Di ba? Laking
Oh.
problema na lang.
Wala rin po siya.
Naka-data lang ako ngayon sa cellphone, nasa labas ako ng bahay. Kasi mahinang signal sa loob ng bahay.
Pero wala rin po si architect maghirang. Siguro po na disconnect din po.
Siguro try natin na ano ko, try kong kontakin. Maghirang. Maghirang.